One of my favorite things about some of the books I've read is when there's a perceived duality, which then gets fractured. A few years ago, I read a book by Hermann Hesse, which was about a man who couldn't decide if he was of an animalistic nature or if he was a rational man. And the whole book was just, am I man, am I wolf, am I man, am I wolf? And when you're reading it, your perspective kind of narrows to see only those options as well. And then the author kind of breaks the fourth wall, and the character's like, I'm a bird of paradise. I'm more than just this one nature. I'm everything and anything. And that was really cathartic and has stuck with me for a long time. And then more recently, I read about a Zen nun who, at the moment of her death, wrote life. And because she did that, she showed that she was fully enlightened because she didn't perceive them to be a duality, but they were the same. And I've been thinking about dualities a lot while I've been working on the Britten Violin Concerto because I think that's at the heart of the piece formally. There are kind of two main characters that I see that are pervasive throughout the entire piece, and of course they come in many different guises, but they are the main two, and those two are rigidity and sensuality. The piece starts with timpani, which is already kind of the buttoned up, rigid character, and maybe not rigid, but at least proper. And then the violin. Obviously the more sensual of the two things I just played. And like I said, they come in different guises. The first one eventually is. But yeah, so these two main characters have kind of informed how I look at the piece, and that kind of made it easy to think about in terms of other dualities. I would never be comfortable saying that I know the meaning of this piece, but for me, I've developed a lot of different meanings because as a performer, I need to be able to have a cohesive story so that I can play it in a cohesive way for the audience. And a lot of people say that this is a requiem for the Spanish Civil War, but he has pieces where he outright says that they are written with the Spanish Civil War in mind, but he doesn't say so for this piece, so I don't know if I can agree. But based on letters I've read and diary entries, it was really on his mind, as well as all of the tension was happening leading up to World War II as well while he was writing this piece. So Britten was a pacifist, and I can really see the rigidity being represented as war, and then the kind of more sensual stuff being idealistic and pacifist, and kind of the struggles of navigating war as a pacifist, and what's active, what's passive, what are all these things, and how do you exist when these things are happening. So that's one pairing that I see. Another is the individual versus society. This was only a little bit before his opera, Peter Grimes, which is very much about the individual and society. And he even said some quote, which was similar to what I'm about to say, but I'm paraphrasing for sure. Something about how society is a monstrous thing and it makes individuals monsters. Something kind of cynical like that. Maybe I'll look up the actual quote later and put it in a comment or something. But I can also see the rigidity as being, like I said, the proper buttoned up society, and the individual dreaming and wanting to be out of the clutches, or still finding a way to express while being in the clutches of this rigid thing. And of course, I also think about Britten himself, his homosexuality when it was illegal, as well as his alleged pedophilia, and his religion, his morality, all of these things. The rigidity could be his religion, it could be his own morality, or it could be the law. And You know, the sensual stuff could be his desire for men, for younger men. You know, all of these things are possible, and these are all the things that I think about or thought about in approaching this piece. For me, the heart of this piece is the third movement, and that kind of starts with the fracturing of this duality. So in the second movement, he has the orchestra goes just kind of endlessly relentless, playing this, and it's getting louder and louder, and then finally the violin joins in, and that's kind of everyone suddenly leaves and the violinist is left alone, and then that's the start of the cadenza, which is this beginning of the unraveling of the dualities. And for me, this was really powerful because all of it ends, and then it's still in the middle of the cadenza, but you hear the rigidity of the very beginning. But it starts to spiral, and it gets, you know, crazy and frenzied, and then it ends up and that for me is the moment when all innocence is lost. Because it's the same theme that was once so full of hope, but it's... And because you're left-hand pitzing the rigid theme, this is the first time that the solo violin has both themes at the same time. And it's kind of genius, because if you're pitzing with this hand, it makes it incredibly hard to vibrate the note that's actually on the string, the finger on the string. And vibrating is kind of beautifying, so there's no way to make this beautiful, at least for me. I guess I could practice more or try harder. But I think that that's kind of the character, is it's not supposed to be beautiful, it's supposed to show that the two can't coexist at the same time. It's really sad, but this leads to more writhing in the violin part, which ends in... And what I'm playing now is just this ascent into the third movement, which for me is kind of the heaviness of realizing that all of the options and modes of living that you knew before this, that you perceived to be options, kind of like man and wolf, those are just completely erased, obliterated, and there's no way of really knowing how to keep going. And then that ascent ends in the third movement. And all the hope is kind of lost, and it ends in this really barren landscape. And then that's when everything really changes in his compositional technique, because, you know, it's been pretty normal in terms of orchestra and soloist interaction, but here in the next entrance, the cellos kind of just play these things, and it's almost like they're staring at you, and the violin goes... And everything that the solo violinist is playing is not really a melody anymore. It's not something you'd sing. It's something you'd speak, or, you know, some kind of recitative in an opera. And it's just so lost. It's so fractured. There are so many silences between each of these little phrases. And you just have this, you know, someone kind of wandering this barren moral landscape. And it's really crazy. But so that's why I think that dualities and the fracturing of them are at the heart of this piece. there are also some other really incredible moments. In the first movement, um, the roles are reversed, and the solo violinist has. And it's like you're trying your best to stay buttoned up, but behind you, the orchestra is going. And I always think of that as kind of like they're sirens, and I'm Odysseus, because they're sounding so sensual and so lush, and it's so tempting to join them, but you only have these really intense, severe things, and you kind of want to sing too, but you can't, and that's a really intense thing to feel when you're playing that he's able to get as a composer. But yeah, that's what I think about the form of the piece, and these are the things I've been thinking about while working on it. Yeah, lots of dualities, but it's such a fantastic piece, and I love that it has kind of a discernible form outside of the ones you learn in music class, because this is really moving when you think that there are only two options, and then it's the opposite of the Hesse I was talking about earlier, because that was kind of like you were narrowing, and then it was like everything is possible for you. You can be any nature you want. And then this was kind of like you can't be either. Nothing you've ever known before is possible. So where do you go from here? And I love that he doesn't give us an answer, and I think that's, one of the best things about anyone, teachers, anything like that, is people who ask the right questions instead of giving answers, and I feel like that's really what he's done in this piece. So that's something I love about it. That's all.